How many physical books do I actually own? Inquiring minds want to know, or maybe not. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I have been pondering how many physical books I actually own. I have a basement full of IKEA bookshelves, each one stuffed with physical copies, but I don't know how many books I actually own, and in some cases, I've forgotten what I have owned because they just sit there on the shelf year after year. So I have decided to give a physical tour of the books that I own. I don't know if I will do every shelf in my basement because that would be a lot. I think I'm going to limit it to about 20, maybe 25 titles per video to keep the video rather short. I will not be going into excessive length with each title, maybe just a sentence or two, or maybe just give you the title and the author. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to start off with my NYRB Classics, because as far as physical books go, they are some of my favorites. They're the ones that I will still buy in physical format over Kindle format most of the time. So let's see what NYRB Classics I have. Compulsory Games by Robert Aickman. He is the grandson of Robert Marsh, who wrote the Gothic horror novel The Beetle. This is a collection of strange short stories. They are not gruesome. They mostly deals with aberrations of nature. Samskara, A Rite for a Dead Man by U.R. Ananthamarty. Got that pronunciation wrong. It is translated from Kannada, a language of India. This is about a Brahmin investigating his life. Omar Pasha Latas, Marshal to the Sultan by Ivo Andrić, translated from the Serbo-Croatian. Andrić was a winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. This is a story set in the 19th century about Christians and Muslims. The Seven Madmen by Roberto Arlt, translated from the Spanish. This is a story about the weirdness in Argentina, a bill collector who is fired and wanders the streets. The Silentary by Antonio Di Benedetto, set in a nameless Latin American city. It is about a middle management man who wants to become a detective novelist and thinks he has to commit a murder to get that book written. The Child and the River by Henri Bosco, translated from the French. In the 19th century, an abused child joins a band of gypsies and explores the French rivers, a little bit like a Huckleberry Finn for France. Molequa by Henri Bosco. A young man inherits an isolated house on a small island off a river in France. Modran by David R. Bunch. Science fiction short stories set in the future with robots and other machines. The first in this series of short stories was originally published in Harlan Ellison's first Dangerous Visions. The Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton, the 17th century classic, an examination in philosophy and psychology on melancholy. The Stronghold by Dino Buzzati, translated from the Italian. In the 19th century, a young man is sent to a stronghold in the army for a short assignment that lasts a lifetime. The Singularity by Dino Buzzati, translated from the Italian. What happens when a computer becomes fully intelligent? The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. What happens when an old woman is sent away to a very odd nursing home? Leonora Carrington is better known for her surrealistic paintings. Down Below by Leonora Carrington. When her husband, the surrealistic painter Max Ernst, died in World War II, she suffered a mental breakdown, and this is her memoir of her experiences with mental health. The Hive by Camilo Jose Celia, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. This is translated from the Spanish. It is set in Spain in 1943. It is told in a cacophony of many voices. More Vagin by Blaise Sanderas, translated from the French. The rough translation of this title is Death Vagina. It is a really strange book. Fear, a novel of World War I by Gabrielle Chevalier, translated from the French. The Simple Past by Driss Charabi, translated from the French. Charabi was a French Moroccan. This is a coming-of-age story of Muslims in Morocco. The Continuous Catherine Mortineau by D.G. Compton. This is a science fiction novel, and in the future, old age has been conquered and is the one thing that no one dies from anymore. Berlin Alexanderplatz by Alfred Doblin, translated from the German. This has been called the German equivalent of Ulysses. The Strudelhof Steps by Hemito von Doderer, translated from the German. This is a portrait of Vienna in the early 20th century. The Family Maschenbur by Der Nestor, translated from the Yiddish. The Life of Jews in Eastern Europe before World War II. The Glory of the Empire by Jean d'Orosman, translated from the French. Once there was a rival empire to Rome, and this book is its history. Of course, that empire is completely fictional. A Posthumous Confession by Marcellus Amantis, translated from the Dutch by J.M. Coetzee, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. This is the story of a troubled young man in a marriage he wants out of, and he thinks that the best method is murder. A very Dostoevskian novel. Novels in 3 Lines by Félix Fénéon, translated from the French. Mostly taken from French newspapers in 1906, this has thousands of entries, stories of murder and mayhem in everyday life. Existential Monday, Philosophical Essays by Benjamin Fontaine, translated from the French. J.R. by William Gaddis, winner of the National Book Award. It is 770 pages without a chapter break. It is about 95% unattributed dialogue. It is a satire on American business. It is about an 8th grader who is able to finagle ownership of some worthless stocks as businesses. But on paper, it looks like his fake corporation is worth millions, and he starts gathering lots of influence. Absolutely hilarious. The Recognitions by William Gaddis, a 900-page novel about art forgery. It is about a talented artist who may not be all that original in his artistic creations, but he can fake good art excellently. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but according to this novel, painting an exact replica of famous art is not a crime unless you fake the signature of the original artist. A fascinating novel. Fat City by Leonard Gardner, a crime novel of a boxer trying to make his way to success. Red Shift by Alan Gardner, 3 intertwining stories from 2nd century Britain, the English Civil War, and 1970s London. On Being Blue, a philosophical inquiry by William H. Gass. What are the philosophical implications and meanings of the color blue? Melville by Jean Genot, a fictional story of Herman Melville in 1849. The Bog People, Iron Age Man Preserved by P.V. Globe. This is a history of the bodies taken out of peat moss bogs. Some of these bodies are so well preserved by the peat that the homicide detectives need to be called in to confirm that this body is actually hundreds or maybe thousands in years old and is no way a modern murder. Marjorie Kemp by Robert Gluck. This is the story of two romantic obsessions. One is the 15th century Marjorie Kemp, a visionary and pilgrim to the Holy Land, and the second is the author himself with his obsession with a young American woman. Pages from the Concord Journals by Edmond and Jules de Concord, translated from the French. These are selections from these two brothers' journals as they visit slums, brothels, department stores, and visit such eminent figures as Zola, Baudelaire, and others. Nightmare Alley by William Lindsay Gresham. This is a 40s crime novel about a down-on-his-luck con man who has to join a circus, a freak show, to avoid being taken in by the police. Blood Dark by Louis Gilliot, translated from the French. A brilliant philosopher is stuck in a provincial town in France. It is 1917, and World War I is raging. The Invisibility Cloak by Ji Fei, translated from the Chinese, set in contemporary Beijing. It is a story of people telling lies to each other. A slim comic novel. Peach Blossom Paradise by Ji Fei, translated from the Chinese. In 1898, reformist intellectuals convinced the emperor that it's time to create a modern state in China. Totem Pole by Sanford Freeman, the radical coming-of-age story of a young Jewish boy in New York City during the Depression and early war years. The Liar by Martin A. Hansen, translated from the Danish, called one of the great classics of modern Scandinavian literature. It is the story of a teacher of a small island off Denmark who has a passion for a former student. In a Lonely Place by Dorothy B. Hughes. It is one of the great crime novels written by a woman in the 40s. It is the story of a soldier returning from World War II who has nothing better to do than commit some crimes. The Lord Chandos Letters by Hugo von Hofmannsthal, translated from the German. He was a famous playwright, poet, and librettist for Richard Strauss's operas. This is a collection of his most famous short stories. Sand by William Hardendorf, translated from the German. This is a thriller set in 1972. It is about the massacre of the Jewish athletes in Munich. Anniversaries by Fue Johnson, translated from the German. It is a novel about a German woman living in New York City with her son between 1967 and 1968. It is representing her diaries, but it is a novel. Okay, that is my first tour of my NYRB Classics library. I will continue until I am done with my NYRB Classics, and then I will decide if I will do more tours of my other bookshelves. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on reading.